You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest State Representative Julie Hamos, who of course is a Democrat from the 18th District. That's much of the North Shore. That district starts in Evanston and goes to Kenilworth. It goes to East Wilmette and then Kenilworth and then most of Winnetka, a bit of Glencoe, a small bit of Rogers Park. She has been in this is her 11th year in the state legislature. We're taping this on June 7th, so just a week ago from the taping was the big vote on taxes and reform. We'll be talking about that. When you're watching it in the suburbs, it'll be the week of June 15th, and in the Chicago area, and Aurora, and Rockford, and perhaps other areas around the state, week of June 22nd. So by that time, we may know much more. The tax increase, income tax increase that failed, which we'll be talking about, proposal of Governor Pat Quinn and the Senate's own proposal. We're talking about perhaps abortion and guns, which are always interesting, not necessarily related, and spending cuts, which could affect much of the state, and education. And is State Representative Julie Hamos running for Attorney General? And we'll start right there. State Representative Julie Hamos, are you running for Attorney General?
Oh my goodness, I'm not ready to make my announcement yet.
Right here on this set, Public Affairs.
We have an Attorney General, and she's doing a good job. And nobody's announcing for anything until she decides what she's doing next, and that's Lisa Madigan.
And when do you suppose she'll decide? You're close.
Well, we thought it would have happened by now, but she's waiting a little longer. And we think that she will probably move on, and then we'll see how the dominoes fall.
But it's likely, if she decides she's running for governor, would you say it's pretty likely you will then decide to run for Attorney General?
I have for a long time now been developing an exploratory committee to look at that race, and we'll decide on who the lineup is and what's going on at that point.
And you've been traveling the state?
I have.
And you've been learning a lot?
Yes.
It's kind of a Hillary Clinton listening tour, right?
It really is in some ways, yes.
And you've been listening. What do you hear?
And as much as I enjoy people, it's really been a pleasure, actually, meeting a whole new group of people. Well, here's one of the things that I have learned. If I walk up to any random group of people, whether they're Democratic stalwarts or people in a restaurant, and I say to them, have we made a case to you on what a state budget deficit means? Do you get that? Is that important to you? And inevitably, people will say, no, we have no idea what that means to us. And I then say, if we haven't made that case, do you support a tax increase? And people inevitably will say, no, I don't. And that's been a really interesting way to think about this. As you remember, I am the chair of the Mass Transit Committee. We had a transit crisis. And before it was over, that transit crisis, we were 5 days from doomsday. People knew what their bus route next Monday morning was going to mean to them getting to work. It was that closely connected. And at the end of that, they were willing to support revenues because they knew how it was going to affect their lives. Right now at the state level, the state budget is weighing heavily on my mind as a responsible state legislator, and we have not made that case to the Illinois public.
And so therefore, the Illinois public at this point does not support an increase in the income tax?
No, I don't think they do, because they don't really understand what's really impacted and what's affected.
But you voted on May 31st in the State House for a modified version of Governor Pat Quinn's proposal to increase the income tax, right?
Yes, I did.
It would have increased the income tax from 3% to 5%.
No, right? It would have been a 1.5% increase from 3% to 4.5%.
Excuse me, the Senate version was 3 to 5.
As a temporary two-year tax, just to get us beyond the economic recovery, hopefully.
Okay.
And really, for me, as a student of the budget and as somebody who pays attention and who has been fighting all my life for the most important human services in the state, really that affects seniors and children and college students, I see that the budget is now going to be drastically cut for those programs, and I knew we needed more revenues. We could not cut our way out of our huge budget deficit, and people didn't understand that because we have not yet made that case.
So a family, roughly put, earning a family income of $100,000 would pay an additional $1,500 in the income tax, in the tax that you supported?
I think that's right. That's a 1.5%.
And you're thinking of running statewide. Admittedly, it's for Attorney General, not for Governor. We see we can look at things. But yet you're willing to do that, even though you recognize right now it's pretty unpopular across the state to support an income tax increase.
I'm not willing to do it. I just felt like it was the only option. We had a $6 billion deficit facing us the last day, May 31st, 1 week ago.
How much of a deficit?
$6 billion for really the health and human services lines, education and human services grant lines. We saw it right there. I could identify for you 470 different lines. Now, are they all needed? Probably not. We were going to figure out a way to get to $4 billion of that. The state still would have had to do some belt tightening. That was fine. We should. But we cannot cut our way out of a $6 billion budget deficit. So it was not a popular vote. It was a terrible vote. Well, it was a painful vote. But for a 2-year temporary income tax to get us beyond, to hopefully get to the economic recovery, to keep the human services system going for the most vulnerable citizens, I see no other way. And I am today scared to death that we are devastating and decimating that system.
But back up a little bit, because the governor, if you're talking essentially about, when you say a $7 billion deficit, or $6 billion, whichever you said,
yes.
$7 billion.
Right.
You're talking about fiscal year 2010.
Yes.
The fiscal year that starts on July 1, 2009, coming up here in a few weeks, and then goes for the next year, right?
Yes.
And Governor Quinn proposed what he said was a balanced budget, and that included or contemplated a income tax increase that would give additional revenue of almost $4 billion.
Well, it was made up to get to that $7 billion. Right. The governor suggested 2 revenue sources, and we didn't accept either one. One was the income tax, as we've been saying. We turned that down. Right. And the second was taking money away from the pension payments that we had to pay this year.
Shorting the pensions.
Shorting the pensions, $2 billion. And we owed $4.5 billion. So it's not like we're not paying anything, but we would be taking $2 billion out and paying it toward the budget.
And the governor would justify that, I believe.
We can't justify that.
I'm saying he would attempt to. We can't say for sure because we haven't been able to get Governor Quinn on the show, and we hope he'll come on. But I have seen him at press conference, asked him questions there. My understanding is he would say, you're not shorting the pension system, because he also had reforms that he was proposing that over the long haul would save enough money, reduce liabilities, the unfunded liabilities of the pension, that would justify putting $2 billion less in this year. Is that what the governor said?
That's right.
Let's be fair to the governor.
But we didn't do either one of those things. We didn't want to reform the pension system, meaning creating a second kind of pension system for people hired from this point on.
That was his proposal, but you didn't pass that.
We didn't even want to deal with that.
You didn't, but he was proposing raising the retirement age for those folks too.
That's right.
Which
for the future. For the future.
He was adjusting the COLA, the cost of living adjustment. He had other adjustments in there. The number of the actual payouts would be less. If people had Social Security, they get only 1.5%
You know what? You're getting into a lot of details,
well,
but
details
really,
are important,
but you're getting into a lot of details. Let me say this:
the devil's in the details. You know what I'm saying?
To have real savings long term in our public pension systems, you just need to do 2 things. I'm told. One is to change the retirement age and move it up somewhat. And secondly is to change the amount annually that the pension benefit increases, the COLA. If you just do those 2 things and not the other 10 things, you can still get to pretty good savings, but we didn't really want to do that.
Do you support that? Would you do that?
I would be open to a 2-tier system. We did that for the CTA unions, and we needed to, because we knew that we only had a certain amount of money. And we had to either spend it on today's service for riders, transit riders, you know, the buses and trains on the street, or we could put into pensions. And at some point, the unions sat at the table. It took us an entire summer of really talking to them and getting them to understand this logic. But we haven't done that yet with the state employees,
and a lot of that, when you
the
say
state unions.
It was you, but you were chair of the Mass Transit Committee, and your background is with unions. Is working with you work with AFSCME, right?
I'm strongly pro-union, but they need to be at the table. And now, as we look ahead 30 years, our pension system is going to have to look very different, because the demographics are going to catch up with us. There will be so many seniors and so many old people that the people then will not be able to support them, our children and grandchildren. So we've got to think long term on this pension issue. We didn't want to do that, and we also didn't want to take the $2 billion out of the pension system. So at the moment, we're $6 billion, not a deficit, it's just a hole in the budget that we're going to fill by taking it out of all those education and human services programs.
There are people who say not, because look at this. Quinn is estimating this fiscal year, the state would get $2 billion in federal stimulus funds. Well, they got $2 billion last year, and the thing is just getting rolling, the stimulus program. There are people at Matt Murphy are saying it's going to be more like $4 to $5 billion this fiscal year. If that happens, that's $3 billion more. It doesn't hit all of that deficit you're talking about, but it cuts it down in half.
Well, that's
I'm
why.
just saying, is that a possibility that those stimulus
Jeff, I
funds
think
may happen?
we're throwing around so many numbers that it's going to be very confusing for the people watching this.
Confusing.
But let me say this.
You get an
remember when Pat Quinn gave his budget address in March, he said we have a $12 billion deficit. And that's for the 6 months this year and for the 12 months next year.
There's $4
so
billion
when you take
for
off
this
when you
year
take
and
off the $6 billion in the economic stimulus,
next fiscal year.
correct, we're down to $6 billion now. We're not talking about the full $12 billion. We have some economic stimulus dollars. We figured out a way to take some of the funds. We figured out a way to refinance our debt. All of that gets us down to $6 billion. There isn't anybody who doesn't say that we right this minute have a $6 billion hole.
No, but let me, I actually looked at what, I do a little prep. And on March 18th, 2009, Governor Quinn handed out to the media a proposed budget. I looked at that.
Yeah.
You know what it said? His estimated deficit for fiscal year 2010, the one you're talking about now? Not 12 billion, not even 8 billion, 7.3.
Because remember, he was talking about the 18-month period.
I'm just saying for this year.
6 months of 09 and...
No, but that's just for the year coming up, he said 7.3.
Okay.
And he said he estimated a stimulus of 2 billion. These are not hard numbers. Tax at that time increase of 3.2 billion. Closing loopholes and other fees, $1 billion. Shorting the pension, he wouldn't call that, we would, 2.3. Spending cuts, 1.3 billion. That, when you total it up, actually gives you a $9.8 billion gain, and he was estimating $2.5 billion would pay for the borrowing for this current fiscal year. So folks, what I'm saying is, if that stimulus is not $2 billion, but it's $5 billion, which is what Matt Murphy's saying, that closes half of that deficit you're talking about, and then just one, and then you go back on that. Matt Murphy also said if you had Medicaid managed care, you could get somewhere between $2 to $4 billion in savings. So the Republican approach, as you've heard this, mostly from the Senate but also from the House, has said you can solve the problems without draconian cuts that you're talking about, without an income tax increase.
And that is completely false.
Okay.
And
but
Matt Murphy's numbers do not add up. And again, if I had a Ross Perot kind of, board, chalkboard,
right.
I could walk you
get the
through.
board out for Representative
I could
Hamos?
walk you through all of this, how the economic stimulus. I have been studying this over and over for the past 3 months because I didn't want to. First of all, I wanted to understand my own vote on an income tax increase. I didn't want to vote for an income tax increase. I wanted to say to the governor, we can do this in many other ways. And I did not want to be there. Believe me, I am a statewide candidate, and I needed to be, people had to prove to me, the governor's people had to prove to me that A, we were doing some belt tightening, B, that we figured into it our economic stimulus dollars, and we did, and C, that we had tried everything possible to reduce government. This governor, we trust, really tried to do that. The previous governor we might not have trusted.
What was that guy's name? Rod Blagojevich, the Democrat who was supported by all other Democrats, including you in 2006?
Of course. But,
people hung George Ryan around the Republicans.
So I really do feel that I did my due diligence. Okay. Matt Murphy's numbers do not add up at all. And right this minute, sitting here, right this minute on June 7th, we are going to see pink slips going out to all the human service agencies that depend on the state to provide these vital state services. And they are going to be told to reduce their budgets by 50%. And that breaks my heart. Now we really are talking about seniors who are not going to be able to get services in their homes. That's one of those grant items. Not the nursing homes, they got their money. It's the seniors getting home care. Cut 50%. We're talking about college students getting need-based scholarships. Cut 50%. We're talking about the early childhood programs. Schools, the general state aid is fine, but the early childhood programs are a grant line. Cut 50%. Our disability programs that provide these services in the home. Cut 50%. This breaks my heart. These are the programs that I have been fighting for years. It keeps people out of more expensive institutional care. And I did my due diligence, and if I could really go along with the Republican agenda to cut Medicaid programs through that plan they developed, if that was even a plan, none of that,
right here.
None of that,
there's 2 pages, folks,
none of that would save money this year.
What specifically?
Well, for example, the Medicaid global waiver, he says is $435 million
per year.
What that means is that you put together a lot of Medicaid programs, and you are able then to bill the federal government for more federal aid. It's increasing the spending for Medicaid so that you could draw down more federal Medicaid. It's not a decrease, it's an increase.
It's a decrease.
It's perfectly good programs.
It's a decrease in the state spending.
No, it's not.
You're saying it's not?
No, it's not.
So he's wrong on that? Okay.
Yes.
Let's go to the next one. Medicaid acute care.
Well, this
is less emergency room use that's being spent now because you have
managed care. A fantastic idea. We're all
$135 million
fantastic
savings.
idea. The managed care
okay.
programs.
You agree with him on that? Okay.
I could totally go along with what they call now medical home. The managed care programs we've had for Medicaid have not worked in Illinois. We need to find out why, and maybe we could do it better.
So there's a potential to get that savings.
There's an openness, but not this year. You can't set that up and show cost savings in 1 year.
The Lewin study says again.
It's absolutely not true.
Pharmacy cost containment of $100 million?
I wish we could. We want to do things better. We want to provide better health care to people.
Could you do it the next year?
I wish we could move along in this direction. I'm certainly not against this. We have tried to do this in Illinois in different ways for the past 10 years.
Move people out of institutional care, more at home and community care at a lower cost. You favor that?
I have been the major proponent for that. What you're tackling with that
$75 million
I just want to stop with that one.
Okay.
This is actually a very important agenda for me and for many other people. It's called rebalancing our system so that not as many people go into state-operated facilities and into nursing homes.
Okay.
To do that, we're taking on two of the toughest groups in Illinois, the nursing home lobby and the state employee unions. I have done that because I do believe we need to create a continuum of care.
So you're willing to take on the unions?
I have been the one fighting this, and I'm telling you right now, today, as we sit here, these are the programs that are going to be cut. We're going to be resulting in more people going into institutions because the institutions are getting their money, and the in-home services. It's not possible to find billions of dollars in savings.
Improve vendor management techniques, $300 million?
We'd love to do it. It's not possible to do this and to find $6 billion of savings in our state budget.
State employee group insurance retiree health care charges, raise them by $1 billion. Is it feasible to do that? You can't
I think the governor did come in with a proposal to do that.
He tried to, but then he backed off. He backed off from the teachers' unions. Matt's saying don't back off. The point is on some of this, as you know, the leaders just met on June 2nd. They had a nice lunch. Speaker Madigan, Senate President Cullerton, Republican House Leader Cross, Senate Republican Leader Radonio, and Governor Quinn sat down, had lunch, came out, met the media, and they said they're going to work on this. And they said the Senate Republican and House Republican agenda was, before we could talk about increased revenue, we're going to talk about reform, which is some of what we've just been discussing. And it's also ethics reform, and we're going to talk about spending cuts. And it sounds like the Democrats agreed they're going to have that discussion.
I think that's fine. We had a pension reform proposal in committee, and the Republicans voted no. The Republicans all voted no in committee on a pension reform proposal that Pat Quinn was putting forward. The Democrats didn't want to vote for it and had to be replaced with other people. So nobody wanted to touch this thing with a 10-foot pole, including the Republicans.
Did they give a reason why?
So it's very nice that they're sitting together. Yes,
did they say
because
why? Why did the Republicans vote no?
Unions are not happy with this.
So the Republicans kowtowed to the unions?
Are just as close to the teachers' unions as the Democrats, and don't believe otherwise.
And bring them on here, and we'll
expose
them.
Don't believe otherwise.
We'll expose them.
Nobody
with your
wanted
help.
to do something. The teachers' unions need to be at the table. I would invite them into the table. We did that with the CTA unions. We did do a two-tiered pension reform system. We did that because they were sitting at the table. Somebody needed to set the table and invite them in. Our leaders did not rise to that challenge this year.
Just for the record, so you're saying, Murphy, when he talks about $4 or $5 billion in stimulus funds, not going to happen this next year?
It is not possible to cut $6 billion out of our budget.
But you're saying it's not possible
and
to
he doesn't have any proposal to do that, and he talks about short-term borrowing. That is as phony as what the previous governor was always recommending. Take fees from this, do a little borrowing, do a little band-aiding, do a little hokey solution, transfer from one fund to the other. Short-term borrowing to solve our state's problems right now is as hokey as all of that.
But you say over the next year we're not going to get $4 to $5 billion in stimulus funds. $2 billion is more accurate.
No,
because
I didn't
that's what
say
the
that.
governor.
I said
but the
that
governor is estimating $2 billion. If Murphy's right on $5 billion, that's $3 billion more. It's clear math. And I'm saying either you think he's right on the $5 billion for stimulus funds, or you think he's wrong.
He is not right. Look,
Okay.
look, the
There you go.
stimulus
Got an answer.
dollars, look, let me say this. The stimulus dollars come in two varieties. One are what we call the shovel-ready projects.
Right.
They're for capital construction needs. They're not to fill our budget. And then the second
Education.
type of
We've had a lot
the
for education.
second type of stimulus dollar is in fact for education and requiring that we pay our bills faster for Medicaid.
Okay.
That is accounted for.
That's
The
operating
other
expenses.
billion, several billion, are in fact for the shovel-ready construction
Well, there's some
project. He
substitution.
glosses over that and puts them together. They're not the same.
There's some substitution, but we'll go on that.
They're not the same, Jeff. One is for the budget needs and one is for the
How
capital
about this?
construction needs.
One last thing, and then we'll go on to the other topics. But Dan Proft, thinking of running for governor on the Republican side.
Great.
He said,
Bring him on.
And he said, right now, under Rod Blagojevich did this, and the state and you folks, and you voted impeachment as one of the articles of impeachment. He'd exceeded his authority when, not with the legislative approval, he increased the Medicaid eligibility from 200% of poverty to 400%, from roughly 43,000 income for a family of four to families of four with incomes of 86,000.
Yeah.
Prof said, cut that back to 200%, save $5 billion in Medicaid eligibility. Is Prof right or wrong on that?
$5 billion?
That's what he said.
Oh, come on. Dan Proft, bring it on. Show us your math. That is just ridiculous. These are
How much would you save? How much should you save,
Wait
and
a
would you do
second,
that?
Jeff, stop.
Okay.
The family care program that we're talking about now are young families. They are young families who are paying for Medicaid on a not Medicaid, family care program, on a sliding fee basis. And we made it available to more families to pay. They're paying a premium to the state to get health care. These are young families. They have the smallest health care needs. They are not very sick people. They are not people in nursing homes who require round-the-clock care. You'd have to show me that by cutting back on that, you would save $5 billion. That is not possible.
What do you think they would save?
You know what?
Do you
If
have
I
a
had
number? Do you have a
no,
number?
I don't have a number
You just know
because
$5 billion is wrong.
it is. You know what? You can't mix up everything and put it all in one big, one big grandiose statement and make it look like it's true. Our Medicaid costs are very large. That is true. The most expensive part of our Medicaid costs are for nursing homes and hospitals. That's about as true as anybody will attest. These are for emergency care and for nursing home care. The young families who signed up for family care with their small children are not the biggest, fastest growing item in our Medicaid
So your
budget.
argument couldn't add up to $5 billion, but you're not sure what it would be.
Not possible.
Okay. Try this one on. The Republicans claim, maybe you dispute this, Illinois has been the fourth lowest in job growth. They put them at 46th in recent years. And they said if they were the fourth highest in job growth rather than the fourth lowest, there would be 1.2 million more jobs now in Illinois, and that would generate revenue, tax revenue, which you might like, of $5 billion.
Great.
Their point is if you raise
billions
tax.
of dollars of new revenues. Bring it on. Show us how you can do it without taxing anybody. They never came up with one proposal for the entire 3 months.
But their proposal
Come
is
on.
their proposal.
I love it. Bring it on. Show us how you can get all these jobs.
Their proposal.
In the middle of the worst recession we've had in 80 years
Their
in this
proposal-
country, they have an idea for getting hundreds of thousands of jobs.
And
Now, come on.
their
Is anybody going to
proposal-
believe
well,
that?
their proposal is the increase in the income tax, which you favor, the increase in the sales tax.
I don't favor. I think it's a temporary income
Which you
tax to
support.
get us through an emergency and a
Right.
crisis.
Okay, which you support. They say that increase in the income tax, the increase in the sales tax, the expansion of the sales tax, which the Senate Democrats supported, no Republicans did.
That was for
Republicans-
services on mostly luxury things.
Republicans say those increases in taxes drive industry away, drive employers away.
Because
drive
employers don't want to pay
expansion away.
sales taxes on health clubs?
And
that's what really keeps them from coming to Illinois?
This is their argument. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm asking for your response. You said bring it on, and they would say...
I love it. Come up with new ideas. I'm waiting to hear
They're
the first one.
saying you're making
a real
Illinois...
one.
Other Democrats have made Illinois a high tax state, and you're making it even higher with this increase in the income tax and the sales tax expansion. Fewer jobs, less tax revenue, more trouble for the people you're concerned about. What do you say to that?
Iowa is a fast-growing state. They're seemingly doing pretty well, and their income tax rate is 8.9%. Illinois' income tax rate is 3%. Wisconsin is way up there, 5% more than ours. These states, the economic climate is not dependent on this 1.5% income tax increase in the time of an emergency to get us through until the economy recovers. I think that when the human services system that takes care of our vulnerable citizens is decimated in the next 6 months, as I fear it will be, it's going to be on the heads of people who refuse to acknowledge that we need some new revenues. We cannot cut our way out of this budget deficit. I wish we could. This is a painful vote for anybody to take because we know that people out there are hurting. But right now, we have an emergency, and people don't realize it yet. We haven't made that case. I take partial responsibility for that, along with the governor, along with the leaders. We have to make a case to the public on why this is so important. But those services that we're talking about are the essential services that state government provides. And right now, when those children cannot go into the early childhood programs for pre-kindergarten and are going to be impacted on their ability to learn a few years down the road, it's all going to be part of the problem that we are experiencing today.
But when you referred to other states having higher income taxes,
almost
higher
every
income tax
state,
rates
every state.
in Illinois, the response back from Republicans, I think, would be, or from those who differ with you, maybe some independents as well, you have to look at the total taxes.
Yeah, that's what I said too.
Okay.
There's a total economic climate.
If you look in addition to the income tax rate in Illinois, which is lower than most other states, but also look at the property tax, also look at the sales tax. The Tax Federation says Illinois is the 14th highest tax state in the nation.
And
so
one
your
of the
point
reasons,
is by raising now the income tax and not changing anything else, you're going to move up that ladder from 14 to something higher.
Well, let me give you
and
another. Let me give you one of my facts.
That's
okay.
their concern.
Let me give you one of my facts. One of the reasons that people pay high property taxes, as we know in Illinois, is because we have a low income tax, and as a result of that, the property tax is what's paying for our schools. The schools are 60% of every property tax bill. So companies, in fact, move to Illinois. They are based somewhere. They have to pay a property tax. They pay a much higher property tax than they do in a corporate income tax. The corporate income tax dollars that are generated from the new income tax increase are only 10%. Companies aren't paying income tax. Companies are not against this. Companies are not against this income tax increase.
We're going to continue to speak as the
companies are not against this because they're not really paying it. They're paying more in property tax.
We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, State Representative Julie Hamos, who we think is running for Attorney General for the state of Illinois.
Next time I'm bringing my Ross Perot charts, and I'm going to prove to you that these numbers you're hearing are phony baloney numbers.
Well, we try to be fair. We just give these numbers. And
well, you know what? If you
when
told
Republicans
me to be
are
prepared,
on here,
I would have brought my Ross Perot charts because I can show you these are phony baloney numbers.
Attorney General. Jack Franks may be running.
Fine,
Dan
bring him
Hines,
on. The more men, the better.
David Hoffman.
I'm happy.
That's your strategy, split the male vote, and you're going to win?
Absolutely.
All right. What's the key issue for running for Attorney General in the state of Illinois? What about reform?
Integrity.
The Democrats failed on reform.
People who are honest and will tell the truth.
Pay to play.
People who will tell the public the truth and will not and will be honest with them and will not pretend that there's billions of dollars of savings and everything.
Should they bring back capital punishment? Is it time?
No. Well, we have capital punishment.
No. Lift the moratorium. Should it be done?
No, not really.
No. Should we have more treatment
not
for
until
drug
we really
offenders?
reform our criminal justice system.